Welcome to this video reviewing the Toothsaver files. This video will first outline each file in the sequence and what they're used for. But if you just want to see in what order each file is used, then you can skip to the part of the video by using the link in the description below. So before we start, I need to give you a disclaimer. I was given these files by Daniel Flynn, who owns the website Toothsavers, for free to review. This needs to be taken into consideration as I've tried my best to be impartial as possible about these files, and Daniel has been very kind and given up a lot of his time to explain why and how these files should be used appropriately. Essentially, the unique selling point of these files are their affordability and their shallow taper. This shallow taper is supposed to preserve the dentin and thus increase the long-term prognosis of the teeth that are treated with these files. Another unusual characteristic is that these files can be used in both reciprocating and rotary action, of which both modes are going to be tested in this video. If you were to buy these files, they can come in either a starter pack, like these shown in the picture, was essentially a pack containing one file of each type, but they can also be purchased as individual file sizes, and these are found in a pack of 6. So starting with the first file in the pack, the orifice opener, used to widen the orifice of the canal and also reposition the orifice within the pulp chamber, making it more accessible. The tip diameter is a ISO 20 and predictably it has a larger taper of 10%, and the length is also smaller at 17mm. The second file is the glide path file, size 15 at the tip with a variable taper. The memory bend on this file is not as strong as the others. Indeed, the photo here shows this. I'm not really sure how significant this is, and the demonstrations in the video certainly don't show any obvious significance. The third file in the pack is a size 20 finishing file, which to some people might feel like this is a too narrow taper to finish on, especially for getting irrigant to the apex. I've spoken to Daniel about my reservations regarding this, and he suggested that it's not really a question of what size I should be using, but more of what type of irrigation tip that is used. I've actually used a size 20 on a few of my clinical cases now, and I've finished on this size file and had some good results, and I might be slowly becoming a convert to this new philosophy. The next file is a size 25 finishing file, same taper as a size 20. One question: why would you finish on a size 25 rather than on a size 20? I think Daniel over at Toothsavers explained this beautifully. He suggested that you never force the file, you just let them guide you. If a size 20 file goes to the apex easily, then a size 25 might be a good candidate to finish on. If the size 20 file is a bit laboured getting to the apex, then staying on a size 20 might be a good idea. Stopping on a smaller taper has its advantages because it decreases the chances of causing iatrogenic damage such as file fracture, ledging, perforation, etc. The final finishing file is a size 30, again using the same philosophy, letting the files guide you in how high the apical diameter should be shaped to. The final file can seem at first like a confusing one. It is a size 20 file at the tip, but has a much larger taper at 7%. Compared to the other size 20, which has a taper of 4%. However, I have been advised that this file can be used in two ways. One way, it can be used as a transition file for practitioners who are used to a larger taper with a final shaping. It's been cited that this file is a similar shape to either a Wave 1 Gold Yellow or a Pro Taper S1. This file can also be used as a GP remover for retreatments, although personally I like to use hedge-on files rather than rotary files to remove GP. Before we get into the live demonstrations, I recognise there are a few people who are watching this video just for a quick refresher on how to use these files. This diagram shown here illustrates how the file should be used, and feel free to pause this video and use this as an aid memoir during treatment. The actual protocol for use with these files is pretty standard stuff. First, the orifice should be explored with a size 10 file, and then the coronal third is shaped at the orifice opener. After this, the remainder of the canal space is then negotiated with a size 10 file all the way to the apical constriction. The size 15 glider file is then used to shape to length. Then the canal is finished with either a 20, 25 or 30 finishing file, depending on how easy it is to reach the length. Also remembering to use lots of irrigation and recapitulation with the size 10 file. Now let's show a real world demonstration of using these files in rotary mode. I must stress though, the video has been edited, so there are not long gaps between me picking up my instruments, etc. So the actual treatment of this plastic tooth would be longer in real time. So as mentioned before, we're using the size 10K file just to explore the orifice, and we're going to use lots of irrigation just to make sure there's no debris in the canal space. The next file, we're going to use the orifice opener. We are going to use this file to reposition the orifice in the pulp chamber, so it's easy for us to treat the tooth, to negotiate the canals. Again, using the size 10 file to negotiate the canal space. Now we're exploring the apical third using a watch winding instrumentation technique. Lots of irrigation. And now we're going to use the glide path. This is the size 15 file, and I'm exploring and shaping the apical third. This file is the only file that uses a different torque setting to the other finishing files. That's really important to know. Irrigation. And again, recapitulation with the size 10 file. This is the length. Again, using the glide path file, I wasn't really convinced that the apical third or the apical constriction was shaped thoroughly enough to a size 15. So I'm just going back in there and also irrigating, make sure all the debris is removed. And again, recapitulation with the size 10 file. So now I'm going to use the size 2004 finishing file. And as you can tell, this has gone quite easily to length, but I think maybe I have created a little bit of debris at the apical constriction there. Maybe I've pecked too many times without irrigating and recapitulating. Yeah, I think if I reflect on this, I probably would have removed the file by now and give it a lot of irrigation. And I suppose in a way this is great about doing these demonstrations. You learn so much, you realise how much debris has an effect on the shaping of a tooth. So this is me now using the size 2504 file. Again, I felt like the size 20 was just a little bit too easy to get to length, so I decided to go one further up to a 25. I am struggling slightly to get to length with the 25, so I think I'm going to finish on this file. Again, recapitulation with a size 10 file. Trying to remove a little bit of debris there. Lots of irrigation. Lots of irrigation, lots of recapitulation, trying to remove that debris, trying to get it as clear as possible. Again, probably in this case, using Irriflex irrigation tip might be better. Back in with a size 25. I really want to make sure this is shaped and the the canal space is nice and open. So more recapitulation with the size 10K file, more irrigation. Really trying to get inside the tooth there, and really trying to push all that debris which is collected in the apical third out, ready for obturation. So I'm using a paper point here to dry the canal space. So paper point 1, this is paper point 2, goes right to length, really nice, lovely to see. And I am using a bioceramic impregnated GP point there, and now I'm coating it with one fill. It's really important with one fill to, I've been told, to double dip, meaning that you get the one fill tip, use this this tip here, just put a little bit in the base of it, and then dip your GP point into here, but rather than doing it once, doing it twice. The first dip kind of just coats the walls, and the second dip, make sure you get all the sealer to the working length. So alternative to rotary, I'm going to just try this tooth in reciprocation mode just to see how well we get on. And again, the protocol for this is pretty much the same. We're going to explore the coronal third with a size 10K file. We're then going to use the orifice opener. It's a size 20 10 taper. This is again to open up and reposition the canal orifice. All of the file systems are using the same setting for the reciprocation, and the counterclockwise angle is 170 degrees and the clockwise angle is 50 degrees, and the speed is 350. This is why it's important that you have an open source endodontic motor. So same again, we've opened up the canal orifice, and now we're exploring the apical third with the size 10K file. Lots of irrigation. Using the size 15 glide path file, again, works pretty well in reciprocation. And using the size 10 file for recapitulation, keeping that canal space patent. Now it's really important to note that this tooth is not exactly the same as the last one. It looks the same, but the apical constriction is much wider. So just something to bear when we're doing this demonstration. So again, using a size 15 glide file just to explore and shape up to the apical third or the apical constriction. Lots of irrigation. Size 10 file, recapitulation. More irrigation. And now we're using a size 20 finishing file. And there's something that I noticed with reciprocation which was slightly different to the rotary mode, is the build-up of debris in the apical third was much more. And obviously recapitulation with the size 10 file was much difficult, and I was also extruding a little bit of the debris past the apex, which is obviously something that's associated with post-operative pain. So that's something to bear in mind when you're using this in reciprocation mode. Again, this is me really struggling to remove the debris from the apical third. More irrigation, and back to using the size 20 finishing file. Again, slightly struggling to remove the debris. And because the size 20 file went quite easily to length, I'm going to go up with a size 25 file. Again, significant debris at the apical third and a little bit of extrusion. Using a paper point to dry the canal space. Cone fit check with the bioceramic impregnated GP cones. Looks like a nice fit. And again, like with the Rotary, we're going to use the one fill bioceramic sealer. And again, for cost effectiveness, what we do here is we squirt a little bit of the bioceramic into the tip, and then we dip the GP cone into this. And we always do a double dip. The first dip is just to coat the walls, and the second dip is to make sure all the bioceramic sealer is pushed to length. And you'll notice on this case we have quite a significant extrusion of bioceramic sealer, but there's an argument to say that this type of extrusion actually isn't a major issue, and some people would argue that is associated with quicker healing. I'm not too sure about the evidence in that case, but what I noticed with this bioceramic sealer is that once you take a 1 year post-op, you will notice that that bioceramic sealer has been completely absorbed by the body. Overall, I think I prefer using these files with a rotary rather than a reciprocation motion. I know that reciprocation is associated mainly with a reduced risk of file fracture, but I just feel like in this case too much debris was created, and even some extruded out to the apex on irrigation. This might be due to my inexperience or the irrigation technique, but I specifically didn't use a reflex tips in this case, mainly because I feel like the general dentist is using just normal side venting needles. Maybe my opinion would be different if I used a specialist irrigation equipment with regard to using rotary or reciprocation. And I'm actually thinking about moving back to rotary, using a Wave 1 Gold, which is reciprocation, user on my private treatments, but actually use Highflex, which is rotary, with my main NHS treatments. Overall, the pros, well, this file is definitely cheap. It's £6.60 each. But you're probably going to need at least 2 files in this situation, which makes it obviously £13, which weirdly enough is about the same price as using Highflex. Definitely not as cheap as using something like Wave 1 Gold or with Reciproc. You know, it's really easy to use, and also I must stress the customer support is really good. I know Daniel's given me these files and obviously has a vested interest to make sure I understand about the files and things like that, but before before that, I noticed and have had dealings with Daniel. He's been very, very, very helpful. And in fact, if you have any questions, he is just ready and waiting to help you. And I suppose also the pro with using these files is that using a smaller taper means less resistance getting to length, and this resistance to getting to length is usually found in the canal further closer to the orifice, which I was quite surprised at. Cons using this file system: if you want to use these particular files in reciprocation mode, you will need an open source motor, meaning you can't just buy an Xmark motor which has presettings, and in fact if you go to Toothsavers, they have a range of very, very, very cheap endodontic motors which do the job, or more high-end, got all bells and whistles motors that you can buy. I suppose another con is it's difficult to get your head around the small tapers. I think in the past, I've always been a little bit worried about smaller tapers because I assume that obturation will be difficult. And I suppose in this case, you do need to use a bioceramic sealer to make sure you obturate the full length of the canal. I suppose what I'm trying to say is you need to be fully integrated with the philosophy of using a small prep, using a bioceramic sealer. And also finally, another con is you might need to use a special irrigation tip. Now that's all great if you're a principal or you're an associate and you have a principal who is quite good with buying you things. But I suppose if you're an NHS dentist, and things are super tight, with budget wise, maybe getting a special irrigation tip is probably a little bit of a step too far. And I suppose the last thing to say is thank you for watching this video. If you enjoy content like this, please like and subscribe my channel, and it just encourages me to make more videos like this. Thank you, and I will speak to you all again soon.